Freddie Mercury was 30 minutes into his vocal warm-up routine when Mary Austin walked into his dressing room at Madison Square Garden on November 14, 1977, and found the man who could command 20,000 people, with a single note sitting on the floor with his head in his hands, tears streaming down his face. What she did in the next 10 minutes would save not just that night's performance, but a friendship that would outlast everything else in both their lives. The air in the dressing room was thick with the smell of hairspray and the distant roar of 18,000 fans already filing into their seats. It was 6:30 p.m., exactly 90 minutes before Queen was scheduled to take the stage for the second night of their sold-out News of the World tour. The room was decorated in the typical rock star fashion of the era: a mirror surrounded by bright bulbs, a rack of elaborate stage costumes, a table laden with untouched fruit and champagne. But none of that mattered to the woman standing frozen in the doorway. Mary Austin was 26 years old, a quietly elegant woman who had been working at the Biba fashion boutique in London when she first met Freddie 5 years earlier. She was known among the band's inner circle as the person who could handle Freddie's moods, the one who could read him when everyone else was confused by his theatrical persona. She had seen him nervous before shows. She had seen him exhausted after grueling tours. She had even seen him angry when things went wrong technically. But this was different. This was raw, unguarded devastation. She had traveled from London specifically for these New York shows, taking time off from her job and enduring an 8-hour flight, because Freddie had called her 3 days earlier and said, in a voice that tried to sound casual but failed completely, "I need you here. Darling, I don't think I can do this alone anymore." She hadn't questioned it. She had simply packed a bag, booked the flight, and arrived at JFK that morning at 11:00 a.m. She had spent the afternoon at the hotel expecting to see Freddie before the show. Instead, she got a frantic call from Brian May at 6:15 p.m., saying only, "Mary, you need to get to the venue, now." The journey from the Mayflower Hotel to Madison Square Garden should have taken 12 minutes. Mary made it in 7, running through Manhattan streets in heels that were completely impractical for running, her breath forming clouds in the November cold, her mind racing with possibilities of what could be wrong. She had burst through the stage door, shown her all-access pass to security, and run down the concrete hallway past crew members hauling equipment, following the sound of her own thundering heartbeat until she reached the door with the gold star that said, "Freddie Mercury." And there he was, the man who wore capes and crowns on stage, who strutted and preened and owned every inch of every venue he played, was curled up on the floor next to his costume rack, his shoulders shaking with sobs. His stage outfit for the evening, the iconic white tank top and white pants he wore for the opening numbers, hung above him like a ghost. His mustache, which he had recently grown despite the record label's objections, was wet with tears. One hand clutched a piece of paper that Mary couldn't quite see. The other hand was pressed against his chest as if he was trying to hold something inside that was threatening to break out. "Freddie?" Mary's voice was barely a whisper. She stepped inside and closed the door quietly behind her, shutting out the chaos of the venue, the sound of roadies shouting coordinates, the distant thunder of the opening band's sound check. "Freddie, what happened?" "E." He looked up at her and Mary felt her breath catch. His eyes, usually so full of mischief and fire, were hollow, lost. The makeup artist had already done his stage makeup an hour earlier, and now it was streaked down his face in black rivers, making him look like a painting left out in the rain. He tried to speak, but no words came out, just a broken sound that made Mary's heart crack. She dropped her purse. She didn't think about the expensive contents or the fact that it fell open and her things scattered across the floor. She just moved, crossing the room in 3 quick steps and dropping to her knees beside him. She didn't ask permission. She simply pulled him into her arms the way she had done 100 times before when they were together as a couple, before everything got complicated, before the world and the fame and the secrets got between them. "I got a letter," Freddie finally managed to say, his voice muffled against her shoulder. His accent, usually carefully modulated for interviews, slipped back to the Zanzibar-inflected English of his childhood. "From my father. He said I'm not his son anymore. He said what I am is a disgrace. He said the family name is more important than—" His voice broke completely. He couldn't finish. Mary felt rage and grief war inside her chest. She knew Freddie's relationship with his father, Bomi Bulsara, had always been strained. She knew about the cultural expectations, the Zoroastrian traditions, the weight of being the only son. She knew that Freddie had changed his name from Farrokh Bulsara to Freddie Mercury partly to create distance, partly to create a new identity that could hold all the parts of himself he wasn't allowed to be. But this was different. This was rejection written on paper, signed with his birth name, delivered to Madison Square Garden so that Freddie would receive it just before one of the biggest shows of his career. "Look at me," Mary said firmly. She pulled back and took his face in both her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. Her thumbs wiped away the tears and ruined makeup, but more kept coming. "Freddie Bulsara, Freddie Mercury. Whatever name you choose, you are remarkable. You are extraordinary. And anyone, including your father, who can't see that, is the one who should be ashamed." "I'm supposed to go out there in an hour," Freddie said, his voice rising with panic. 18,000 people, the whole band, the crew, everyone depends on this. And I can't. Mary, I can't even breathe properly. How am I supposed to sing? How am I supposed to be him?" He gestured vaguely toward the costume hanging above them. Mary looked at the costume, then at the mirror surrounded by lights, then at the man falling apart in front of her. And in that moment she made a decision that everyone who was there that night would later say saved everything. "You're not," she said simply. Freddie stared at her, confused. "What? You're not going to be him tonight. That character you play, the untouchable rock god. You're going to be you, the real you, the one who's hurt and scared and human." She reached out and grabbed the piece of paper from his hand, the letter from his father. She looked at it for just a moment, long enough to see the harsh words written in careful handwriting. Then she did something that shocked even herself. She tore it in half, then in half again. Then again, until it was confetti in her hands. She stood up, walked to the small trash can near the makeup table, and threw the pieces away. "Mary, what are you—" "That letter," Mary said, her voice steady despite the tears now running down her own face, "is not the truth. It's fear. It's pain. It's someone who loves you but doesn't know how to show it anymore. But it is not. It will never be the truth about who you are." She walked back to Freddie and extended her hand to him. "Now stand up." Freddie looked at her hand like it was a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. Slowly, shakily, he reached up and took it. Mary helped him to his feet. He swayed slightly, unsteady, and she held him firmly until he found his balance. "We're going to fix your makeup," Mary said, already moving toward the makeup table and grabbing tissues and cold cream. "And then you're going to get dressed, and then you're going to walk out on that stage. But tonight, you're not going to perform for your father's approval. You're not going to perform to prove anything to anyone. You're going to perform for every person out there who has ever felt like they weren't enough. For every person who's been told they're a disgrace for being who they are. For every person who needs to know that being different, being extraordinary, being gloriously, unapologetically yourself is the only thing worth being." She sat him down in the chair facing the mirror and began gently removing the ruined makeup. Her hands were steady, practiced. She had done this before, back when they lived together in a tiny flat in Kensington, back when Freddie was still trying to figure out who he was, back when the world was smaller and simpler. She cleaned his face with cold cream, wiping away the black streaks, the evidence of his breakdown, giving him a blank canvas to start again. "I don't know if I'm strong enough," Freddie whispered, staring at his reflection. Without the makeup, he looked younger, more vulnerable. The stage persona was gone, and what remained was just a 31-year-old man who wanted his father's love. "You are," Mary said firmly. She picked up the eyeliner pencil. "You're the strongest person I know. You left your country. You left your birth name. You left safety and convention and everything that was expected of you, and you built this." She gestured around the dressing room, but she meant more than just the physical space. She meant the career, the music, the legacy, the courage to be different. That takes more strength than your father will ever understand. She began reapplying his makeup, but differently this time. Not the heavy theatrical mask he usually wore, but something softer, more real. She worked in silence for a few minutes, and Freddie sat perfectly still, trusting her completely. This was what they had always been to each other, even after the romance ended. A safe place, a person who saw the truth and loved it anyway. "Mary," Freddie said quietly as she finished his eyes, "why are you still here? After everything, after I couldn't be what you needed me to be, after I broke your heart. Why did you get on that plane?" Mary paused, the makeup brush hovering in the air. She looked at him in the mirror, their eyes meeting in the reflection. "Because you're my family," she said simply. "Not because of blood or law or any other rule someone else made up, but because I choose you. Every day I choose you. And nothing, not even your father, gets to change that." Freddie's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were different. These were tears of gratitude, of relief, of being seen and accepted completely. He reached up and grabbed Mary's hand, holding it tightly. "I need you to stay," he said. "Not just tonight. I need you in my life. Always. Promise me, no matter what happens, no matter where this life takes us, you'll stay." "I promise," Mary said without hesitation. "I'll always be here." There was a knock at the door. "5 minutes, Freddie." It was Roger Taylor's voice, tight with worry. The band knew something was wrong. They always knew. Mary helped Freddie into his costume, her hands quick and efficient. She buttoned his pants, adjusted his tank top, handed him his armbands. Then she stood back and looked at him. He looked like himself again, but different somehow. More present, more real. "One more thing," Mary said. She reached into her own purse, found what she was looking for, and pulled out a small silver pendant on a chain. It was a phoenix rising from flames. She had bought it at a street market in London 2 years ago and had been carrying it with her ever since, waiting for the right moment. This was that moment. She fastened it around Freddie's neck, tucking it beneath his tank top so it rested against his heart. "For when you feel like you're burning down," she said quietly, "to remind you that you always rise again." Freddie touched the pendant through the fabric of his shirt, feeling its weight, its presence. He looked at Mary with an expression of such profound love and gratitude that it transcended any romantic category. This was soul recognizing soul. This was two people who had chosen to be family to each other in a world that tried to tell them that wasn't valid. "Go be brilliant," Mary said, stepping back. "Because you are, whether your father sees it or not." Freddie took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the handle and looked back at her one more time. "Thank you," he said. And then he was gone, walking down the hallway toward the stage entrance, toward the roar of the crowd, toward the performance that would become legendary. Mary followed at a distance, watching as Freddie joined Brian, Roger, and John in the wings. She saw the band members look at him with concern, saw the quick exchange of words she couldn't hear, saw the way they moved closer to him protectively. Then the lights went down in the arena. The crowd erupted, and Queen walked onto the stage. But here's the part that nobody who was there that night could have predicted. The part that changed everything. Freddie didn't perform like a man who had been broken an hour earlier. He performed like a man set free. He gave what many critics and fans would later call the most raw, emotionally powerful performance of his career. Between songs, he spoke to the audience in a way he never had before, dropping the theatrical persona and just talking to them, human to human. He told them about feeling like an outsider, about being told you're not enough, about the people who try to make you small so they can feel big. "But you know what?" he said into the microphone, his voice carrying to every corner of the arena. "We're all we've got, each other. This beautiful, broken, extraordinary family we make together in this room. And that's enough. That's more than enough." The crowd went silent. 18,000 people held their breath. And then, as if by some unspoken agreement, they began to cheer. Not the screaming, frenzied cheering of fans at a rock concert, but something deeper. A roar of recognition, of solidarity, of chosen family acknowledging chosen family. From the side of the stage, Mary Austin watched through tears. She saw Freddie touch the pendant beneath his shirt. She saw him smile, really smile, for the first time since she'd arrived. And she knew that something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't just about saving a performance. This was about saving a person. After the show, Freddie found Mary backstage. He was drenched in sweat, exhausted, exhilarated. Without a word, he pulled her into a crushing hug and held her for a long time, long enough that the crew started to file past them, long enough that the band came and went, long enough that the arena began to empty. When he finally pulled back, he said, "I'm going to buy you a house." Mary laughed, thinking he was joking. "What?" "I'm serious. I'm going to buy you a house. The best house I can find. Because you saved my life tonight, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to worry about anything." Mary shook her head. "I don't need a house, Freddie. I just need you to be okay." "You'll have both," Freddie said firmly. And he meant it. But here's the incredible part that nobody expected. 2 years later, in 1979, Freddie did exactly what he promised. He bought Mary Austin a beautiful house in London, near his own. But it was what happened after that that truly defined their relationship. When Freddie's career exploded even further, when Queen became one of the biggest bands in the world, when money and fame could have changed everything, Mary remained his closest friend, his confidant, his chosen family. He called her almost every day, no matter where in the world he was touring. He made her the executor of his estate. He left her the bulk of his fortune and his beloved home, Garden Lodge, because, in his words, she was the only one who mattered. And that Phoenix pendant, Freddie wore it for every single performance for the rest of his career. In interviews years later, when asked about it, he would smile mysteriously and say, "It reminds me that the people who truly love you help you rise, not stay down." He never mentioned the letter from his father. He never spoke about that night at Madison Square Garden in detail. But everyone close to him knew that something had changed in that dressing room. Something that made him freer, more authentic, more willing to be vulnerable on stage. Mary kept her promise too. She was there through all of it. The soaring successes and the devastating illness that would eventually take Freddie's life. She was there at his bedside in his final days in November 1991, holding his hand, reminding him one more time that he was loved, that he was extraordinary, that he had risen from every flame that tried to burn him down. And when he passed away on November 24, 1991, she made sure he was buried wearing that same silver phoenix pendant, so that even in death, he carried the reminder of the moment someone chose him completely. Today, the Mary Austin-Freddie Mercury friendship is considered one of the most profound relationships in rock and roll history. It transcends the categories we usually use to understand love. It reminds us that family is who you choose, who shows up when you're on the floor of a dressing room, who tears up the letters that try to diminish you, who gives you a phoenix and tells you to rise. Their story challenges us to ask ourselves, who would we show up for like that? Who would show up for us? The house Freddie bought for Mary still stands in London. Mary Austin, now in her 70s, still lives nearby and guards Freddie's legacy fiercely. The foundation established in Freddie's name has raised over $20 million for AIDS research and LGBTQ+ youth support. And somewhere, in a display at a Queen Museum exhibition, there's a photograph of Freddie on stage at Madison Square Garden on November 14, 1977, his hand touching his chest, where a silver pendant rests, his face showing a vulnerability and strength that would define the rest of his career. This is what love looks like when it's stripped of all the rules and expectations. This is what it means to save someone, not by fixing them, but by reminding them who they already are. If this incredible story of unconditional love and the power of chosen family moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about the transformative power of showing up for the people you love. Have you ever had a friend who saw you completely and loved you anyway? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing true stories about the heart behind music's greatest legends.